All right, we were just listening to Victor Escalon, Texas Department of Public Safety, South Texas Regional Director, painting a picture of the timeline here, also saying off the top, talking about how this is traumatic for all of those in law enforcement and the community. We are all hurting inside, the victims, the family members. We feel for them. There have been a number of gaps in this timeline, and in this presser, he did try to clarify a couple things. One of them is about early reports of a school resource officer who supposedly engaged the suspect before he went inside, but shots weren't fired. To clear that up, he said nobody ever engaged the suspect before he walked inside the building. In fact, he was able to walk unobstructed inside what they believe was an unlocked door around the back of the building before he carried out his carnage inside. I want to bring in our chief national correspondent, Matt Gutman, because some of the other questions that we heard reporters asking him repeatedly is this timeline here about an hour after the suspect entered the building. The initial responding officers were hunkering down, calling for backup. They wanted more tactical gear and body armor, but during that time, children were dying inside the classroom. And those are the questions, Matt, he was unable to answer.
The timeline remains murky. We're not exactly sure when the incident began, right? So according to DPS, Texas Department of Safety, the incident began when the suspect wrecked his car at 11:28 a.m., just a block and a half away from where I'm standing. But 911 calls were made minutes earlier when the suspect allegedly shot his grandmother in the face. I've spoken to those eyewitnesses, so they knew there was a shooting incident in the area. At 11:40, the officer just said that he breached the school. 12 minutes later. 4 minutes after that, 11:44, 16 minutes after the incident allegedly began with that crash, that's when UVD, the Uvalde Police Department officers responded to the scene and tried to confront the shooter. At that time, scampered inside and began shooting inside the classroom. One thing that is clarified, we understood until now that those two officers who we understand actually took fire and were wounded, just waited outside the door of the classroom as the suspect fired on those kids, essentially executing them with. We understood they just waited there for help. But what is a picture that was painted a little bit more clearly now is that they were actually trying to clear and evacuate the rest of the building. All of the teachers, the administrators, and of course, many students who were still here and not in harm's way. So that gives us a clearer picture of what they were doing as they were trying to get all the resources necessary to try to take out the shooter. But as you noted, it sounds like he was saying it was an hour from the time the incident started, 11:28, until the shooter was taken out by BORTAC, by the Border Patrol Special Unit, at around, I guess, 12:30 p.m., a full hour after it started, and even longer if you factor in the fact that his grandmother was shot a few minutes before that. So this is a very long incident, and it gives you a sense of why this investigation is so complex at this point, but certainly not the answers that I think everybody here and everybody at home wanted to hear with.
Matt Gutman for us, thank you. Now, I do want to show some of this video that we had from earlier. It's cell phone video. You heard some of the reporters asking about this moment, trying to clarify what happened here. But in the video, you could actually hear the desperate pleas from parents to go inside the building, asking those officers, begging them to get in there and do something. And again, we know that officers were inside. We know that a couple of officers were shot in the initial shootout. But there are also these questions about this other hour that played out, that the shooter was allowed to remain alive inside that building. Let's bring in our investigative correspondent, ABC's Aaron Katurski. And Aaron, I know that you've been following the gunman's movements in the days and the minutes leading up to this shooting. Do you feel like you got more answers to your questions from this presser today?
Well, I think the answers that were given, Whit, are unlikely to satisfy some of the criticisms we've been hearing from frustrated and angry parents wanting to know why more officers were not entering the school to try to save more of the children. It was left to some parents on their own to go into the school and try to bring their own kids, if not others, to safety. The briefing from the Texas Department of Public Safety said the majority of the gunfire occurred on Tuesday at the beginning when the suspect had just entered a classroom, and that suggests that most, if not all, of the children and the two teachers were shot toward the beginning. It makes it seem as if the police are saying even if more officers were able to make it in, they could not have saved the children that had died. But there is that long gap, and it does beg the question whether more officers could have been brought to bear from neighboring counties, although it is a rural area, Whit, and it does take a while to get to that scene.
Yeah, that DPS regional director was making the case that they didn't make immediate entry because of the gunfire they were hearing, saying that they needed tactical equipment, they needed body armor, they needed to evacuate people from the building. Let's bring in our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, because you've been following these school shootings and the evolution of the tactical response from law enforcement for years now. And Pierre, correct me if I'm wrong, but everything that we've been hearing over the years is that you can't wait, even if it's just a few officers. They have to form a team. They have to go in right away and neutralize the suspect.
Whit, you're exactly right. The lessons of Columbine, they started training police to go in immediately, keep engaging the suspect so that he cannot kill people. Two things struck me about the briefing. Number one, that the door, he walked into the school unimpeded, that there was no school resource officer available to confront him initially. And Whit, you're zeroing in on the thing. They confront him as he's in the building. They take fire. They move back. He goes into the classroom based on the account we were just given. And he's in the classroom for some period of time, holding the officers at bay. And did he kill the children initially in a quick burst? We just don't have the answers to that. But you hit the nail on the head. The point is, you have to continue to engage the suspect so he cannot attack other people. That is a critical question.
And it's such these are difficult questions because nobody wants to question, you know, the courage or the bravery. We know that officers went in there and officers were shot and they were working to save other kids. But these are questions that ultimately do need to be answered. And let's go back to Matt Gutman if we can, because Matt, I know that you've been reporting from the suspect's home where he was living with his grandmother. We got some more details about what happened there. As you reported, he shot his grandmother, and it was actually, she was the one who ran out and got help and then, you know, called 911. And it raises this other question about if a shooting occurred within the neighborhood. I think they live less than a half mile away from the school. If a shooting occurred, why wasn't that school put on lockdown before this ever happened?
That is the exact right question, and I imagine that everybody in this community is asking it right now, right? There is a significant time gap between when that first shooting happened at the suspect's grandmother's house to when he crashed that car a block and a half away from here, right? There appeared to have been an ample period of time. Where was 911 responding? Where were the first responders to that shooting? Was it that they got misdirected? They went to the wrong place and didn't know about this. But the question is, why wasn't this school on lockdown? Now, important to note that here at the press conference, the sub-chief said that the suspect climbed the fence, but then he was also roaming the school, apparently, for some period of time before he went into the classroom. But that question of why every single classroom wasn't locked down is going to be one that haunts this community for a long time, as is the question of why they didn't get here more quickly than, depending how you see it, a 12 or 16-minute time gap with.
Yeah, we also know that after that first 911 call at 11:30 and after he crashed his truck, there were other witnesses that saw him walking around with that rifle. And it was 10 more minutes before he actually walked into the school. Matt Gutman for us, thank you so much. We appreciate your reporting. We do also have, if you can imagine, if this story could get any more tragic, we have another sad update to everything that's happening here. What you're looking at here is a tweet from the nephew of one of the teachers who was killed. And he tweets here, it's extremely heartbreaking, and it comes with deep sorrow to say that my tia Irma's husband, Joe Garcia, has passed away due to grief. I am truly at a loss for words for how we are feeling. Please pray for us, pray for our family. God have mercy on us. This isn't easy. Now, Irma Garcia was one of the two teachers who was shot and killed. Her husband, Joe, they were married for 24 years, about to celebrate their 25th anniversary. Family members tell us he suffered a heart attack and died. Again, just highlighting the unbearable grief and pain that this community is feeling right now. I want to bring in our ABC News contributor, Maria Elena Salinas, who is there in Uvalde, Texas. And Maria Elena, I know that you've been speaking with family members of victims, community leaders. How are they doing now, just over 48 hours from this horrific tragedy?
Well, there seems to be a collective sense of grief in this city. It's a very close-knit community. The majority are Mexican Americans, so like to call themselves Tex-Mex. And they're very sad, they're very worried, they have a lot of questions. They don't understand how someone can kill young little children. We are right now in this town square where there's a makeshift memorial with crosses with the names of a lot of the children, or all of the children that died during that shooting, including the name of Rogelio Torres. He's a young 10-year-old who liked to play football, who liked to take care of his siblings. And we spoke today to his mother, Eva Dulia Horta, and as we can imagine, she was struck with grief, very sad, and conflicted because she feels that she needs to stay strong and look strong in front of her other 3 children. There was one of her boys who was also in the school, who is 1 year younger than Rogelio, who was in the school and who heard some of the shooting, was worried about his brother, but had no idea really what had happened. So this is a very sad situation for her, for the entire family. Of course, she is, like many other families here, surrounded by family members, by her twin sister, by her mother, by her siblings, her cousins, her tias. This is something that is very common in the Latino community, where you have an extended family that includes not only your blood relatives, but also your neighbors. That is very important, and that's exactly what these communities are doing to support each other. But it's hard to say. She did tell me that right now she doesn't want to think about the shooter. She doesn't want to know anything about the shooter. She just wants to concentrate and think about her little boy that didn't come home after dropping him off at school that day.
And this is a community that's going to need the support of this entire country for many months and years to come. Maria Elena, thank you so much. I do want to note, too, you saw in her shot behind her there, that growing memorial, 21 crosses that are set up there. There's the live picture. 19 children, 2 teachers. Another reminder, today would have been the last day of school at Robb Elementary. Of course, a day that kids look forward to all year, and now parents are planning funerals. Our coverage continues here on ABC News Live and abcnews.com. David Muir and the entire World News team will be right back here later this evening. For now, I'm Whit Johnson in New York. Have a good day.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.